Identities, characterization, and adding flavor to characters. This is Scaring with Sammy. Often, when we are given a position or a role in a haunt, we are given almost a blank slate. You are a serial killer and you're in the serial killer room and you collect people's faces. Okay, so here I am, I'm the serial killer, I'm in my room, I collect faces, so when the guests come by, I want to rip your face off. And now we have a baseline. This is kind of a blank, almost a blank canvas for us to work with. But we want to do more than that. We are creating these fantasy worlds, these nightmare realms, and we want to make it feel real. And we want it to be interesting and unique and a little bit memorable. And the way that you're going to do this is by adding the characterization, creating sort of a whole creature, a whole character, and adding flavor to that character. And one of the ways that we can do this is through identities. Identities are something that we can kind of take in, and we have their qualities, and that we will express. It will become part of the character. An identity is something that has definitive qualities that are different to you than what you would find in, say, something else in that same group. So, for example, if we said animals, I'm going to take animals. It's a very basic identity to use. I'm going to take the identity of a dog. I'm going to add that dog to my character. So it's very subjective because this is how I feel a dog moves. But it's going to be different for me than it is if I was to, say, select a lizard or a bird. One of those is going to have very different characteristics to me because this is all very subjective. So by having a dog, I'm taking in those particular qualities that I've decided that this is how a dog would move and be, and it's changing the characterization. And not only that, but you can make it more specific because there are so many different types of dogs. I could just say, I'm going to add a quality of a Chihuahua as opposed to a quality of a Great Dane. So because I have an idea of how these different animals are, I can bring them into my body and they're going to change my expression and they're going to be different than if I made other choices. That's how the identities basically work. Now, animals and sort of these larger, ideas and qualities, I call them totems because they kind of overtake the character. Of course, you get different levels, 30%, 50%, 70%, whatever it is, but they kind of, these are kind of broader, for the character. So we're gonna have the dog, or or a reptile, or whatever it is. Totems include things like animals, of course, zodiac, because people have different ideas. I have a different idea of how a Taurus would behave as opposed to a Scorpio or a Pisces. You can use, say, groups from, like group dynamic type characters. For example, mythological creatures, mythological figures. If you Hermes would kind of behave differently than if your totem was the Furies. Same thing with Gilligan's Island. I'm going to associate this character more with Gilligan. No, this character is going to be more of a Ginger or a Skipper. And by embracing those different qualities, you will have different characterizations. Those are what I call totems. Then we get to the next group, which is called aspects, which I like to use to add onto those. And that's when we get to the more abstract, a little bit more esoteric. Things like elements. Add an element of earth to the character. The character feels a lot heavier. Or maybe wind, or fire, or water. And by adding these different elements to that character, once again, you're changing up the character. Same thing with seasons. You can use ecosystems. This character feels more like a desert. Colors. I love using colors. Now, colors they're very abstract. But, you would think, add a little bit of green to that character. Well, what am I going to do there? But if you think about it, it's the same thing as everything else. What does green say to you? So for me, green means, it might mean, grass and trees and life. And so my green might be here, as opposed to, say, my red. Red to me would be bold and brash. But these are, once again, very subjective. Somebody else might take green and say, oh, green is moldy and slime. So now you are adding these types of aspects to the characterization. So for example, if you started off with your serial killer, I want to rip your face off, and let's give him a totem of a cat. And so a cat would be a little bit more of a tiger. I'm going to rip your face off. And now we're going to add a color. So instead of here, let's add a color of yellow. So a little bit more, lighter, reserved. So now we've got the cat and the yellow, I want to rip your face off. And it's going to change the characterizations, all these different things that you're adding and playing with. And that's what it's really all about. It's about playing with these different ideas that you can add to your character and characterization. And it's going to change, without even actually having to think specifically, oh, I'm going to move this arm differently. And on top of that, we can add descriptors, which are other qualities. Descriptors are things that already have kind of their own definition, which is a little bit less subjective, but it still kind of is. Things like adjectives, adverbs, emotions, sensations. So you can add that little sinister, malevolent, mocking. Let's add mocking to that, to our serial killer. So now instead of having a serial killer that's saying, I want to rip your face off, we've got the tiger and yellow tiger, but it's, it's a little mocking. I want to rip your face off. And it's just changing the characterization. And that's what this is all about. It's about playing with different ideas, taking them into your body, using your imagination, defining different ideas of how these other things work and bring them into your body so that you can express them, change your character, add flavor to the character, change your characterization. Identities. This is Scaring with Sammy.